Pepper's feathers ruffled in the autumn breeze as he perched on the weathered wooden fence post overlooking Meadowlark Road. His intelligent eyes tracked a passing car, head tilting slightly as it disappeared around the bend. Then, as he had done every day for seasons beyond count, the African grey parrot resumed his vigilant watch. The locals of Oakridge had grown accustomed to the sight. The beautiful grey bird with striking red tail feathers had become as much a part of the landscape as the sprawling oak trees that gave the town its name. Some residents would slow their vehicles as they passed, offering a respectful nod to the parrot's unwavering dedication. Others left small containers of water or choice seeds nearby, silent acknowledgments of a vigil whose purpose remained a mystery to all but Pepper himself. "Jazz still there, just like clockwork," Ruth Calloway remarked to her husband Thomas as they drove past on their way to the farmer's market. "Wonder what keeps him there day after day, rain or shine." Thomas shook his head, eyes briefly meeting the parrot's intense gaze in his rearview mirror. "Some things defy explanation," he replied softly. "But I'd bet my last dollar there is a story behind those eyes that would break your heart in two." Say, what the kind-hearted couple couldn't know was just how right Thomas's intuition had been. Long before Pepper had claimed the fence post as his lookout, he had lived a life of comfort and companionship in a cozy cottage just a mile down Meadowlark Road. His human, William Harrison, had been a retired language professor with gentle hands and endless patience. Their bond had transcended the usual relationship between pet and owner. They were family in every way that mattered. William had spent years teaching Pepper not just to mimic sounds, but to understand context and meaning. Their evenings were filled with conversations more substantial than many humans shared, discussions of books William read aloud, and music they both enjoyed. Pepper had absorbed it all, his remarkable intelligence flourishing under William's devoted guidance. "You are not just repeating words, my friend," William would often say, his eyes crinkling with affection. "You're learning to truly communicate. There's a world of difference." Pepper would bob his head in agreement. Difference, understanding. Pepper understands. Their peaceful existence had been shattered one stormy evening when William, returning from a trip to visit his daughter in the next town, had been forced to swerve to avoid a fallen tree branch on Meadowlark Road. His ancient station wagon had skidded on the rain-slicked asphalt, coming to rest in the deep drainage ditch that ran alongside the road. The accident itself hadn't been severe. William had suffered only minor injuries, but when he had tried to climb from the ditch back to the road to flag down help, the slippery mud had given way beneath him. The fall had been bad, leaving him unable to move, trapped in the ditch as the cold rain continued to fall. Pepper, who had been traveling in his carrier in the passenger seat, had managed to push open the door of his cage after the impact. With remarkable determination, he had squeezed through the car's partially open window and taken flight into the storm. For hours, the loyal parrot had flown back and forth along Meadowlark Road, crying out for help in William's voice. Help needed, help on Meadowlark, emergency. But the storm had driven most people indoors, and those few cars that passed couldn't see William in the darkness and rain, nor did they recognize the significance of a parrot's desperate cries. By the time first light broke and a passing jogger spotted the vehicle and its injured owner, William's condition had deteriorated significantly. "Stay strong, my friend," Pepper had said as he perched on the stretcher, while paramedics prepared to load William into the ambulance. They had tried to shoo away the bird, but William's weak gesture had stopped them. "Promise me," William had whispered, his voice barely audible over the ambient noise of emergency equipment. "Promise you'll be waiting. I'll come back for you." Pepper had bobbed his head solemnly. Pepper wait, Pepper promise. And so he had, taking up his post on the fence where the ambulance had last been visible, watching the bend in the road with unwavering devotion. Days turned to weeks, weeks to months, and still Pepper maintained his vigil. The locals, initially amused by the parrot's presence, gradually came to respect his dedication, though none knew exactly what or whom he was waiting for. Parker Miller, who owned the small convenience store at the crossroads, had been the first to take a more active interest in the parrot's welfare. "Can it just leave him out there with nothing?" Parker had declared one morning, setting out a small platform feeder near the fence post. "Bird S got heart, whatever his reason." Gabriel Foster, the local veterinarian, had eventually created a more permanent shelter, a weatherproof birdhouse mounted on the fence near Pepper's preferred perch. "He was not going anywhere," Gabriel had explained to curious onlookers as he installed the structure. "Least we can do is make his weight a bit more comfortable." Pepper had accepted these kindnesses with dignified appreciation, allowing Gabriel to check him for health issues and Parker to refill his food and water. But he never abandoned his post for more than brief flights to stretch his wings. Whatever promise he had made, whatever bond compelled him to maintain his watch, it was stronger than comfort, stronger than the natural instinct to seek easier surroundings. As seasons changed around him, Pepper remained constant. He endured summer heat waves, sheltered from thunderstorms, and puffed his feathers against winter chills. His vocabulary, once extensive, gradually reduced to phrases centered around waiting, coming home, and promises kept. The complexity of his former conversations with William faded, but his determination never did. The mystery of Pepper's vigil might have remained unsolved indefinitely had it not been for Yasmin Chen, a new nurse who started working at Oak Ridge Memorial Hospital in the long-term care ward. Passing Meadowlark Road on her commute, she became intrigued by the faithful Parrot. "There is something about him," she mentioned to a colleague during lunch, "something almost human in the way he watches the road." Her colleague, a long-time Oak Ridge resident, shrugged. "Well, that bird has been there for years. Nobody knows why. It is just one of those small-town mysteries." But Yasmin couldn't dismiss her curiosity so easily. Having worked previously at a rehabilitation center that used therapy animals, she recognized the unique intelligence of African grey parrots. This wasn't just any bird maintaining a random pattern. This was purposeful behavior. One evening after her shift, Yasmin stopped her car near Pepper's post. Approaching slowly to avoid startling him, she spoke in the gentle tone she used with her most vulnerable patients. "Hello there. You've been waiting a long time, haven't you?" Pepper regarded her with those keen, knowing eyes, tilting his head slightly as if assessing her intentions. "Waiting," he confirmed, his voice clear despite years spent outdoors. Pepper waiting for William. William coming home. Yasmin felt a chill run down her spine that had nothing to do with the autumn air. The name triggered a memory, a note she had seen in a patient chart just the previous week. "William," she repeated softly. "Does William have white hair and glasses? Was he in an accident on this road?" Pepper's reaction was immediate and unmistakable. His wings fluttered in excitement, and he hopped along the fence toward her. "William, accident, help needed." The words tumbled out in a rush, as if a dam had broken. "Pepper, wait. Pepper, promise." Yasmin's heart began to race. Could it be possible? The William Harrison in room 212 had been transferred to Oak Ridge Memorial from a long-term care facility in the next county just last month. According to his chart, he had suffered a traumatic brain injury in a car accident years ago. The initial notes mentioned that he had been found in a drainage ditch off Meadowlark Road after a storm, suffering from hypothermia and a severe head injury. He rarely spoke now, and when he did, his words often seemed disconnected from his surroundings. But there was one phrase he repeated more than any other, a question that had puzzled the nursing staff. "Is Pepper still waiting? I promised I'd come back." Yasmin looked at the patient Parrot with new understanding, pieces of an extraordinary puzzle falling into place in her mind. "Pepper," she said carefully, hardly believing what she was about to suggest, "would you like to see William?" The Parrot's response was so human in its emotion that Yasmin felt tears spring to her eyes. "William coming home," Pepper said, his voice somehow infused with both question and desperate hope. Pepper waiting, long time waiting. In that moment, standing on a quiet road as the setting sun painted the sky in hues of orange and pink, Yasmin made a decision that would challenge hospital protocols and potentially her professional standing. But looking into those intelligent eyes, she couldn't deny the profound connection that had kept this remarkable bird at his post through years of patient waiting. "Yes," she promised, her voice thick with emotion. "William is coming home. But first, Pepper, I think it is time you came with me. There is someone who's been waiting for you too." As she extended her arm in invitation, Yasmin had no way of knowing that this moment would set in motion events that would transform not only William's life, but the entire community of Oakridge. Nor could she predict the astonishing revelations that would emerge once Pepper was reunited with his beloved human. Secrets that had been hidden in plain sight for years, waiting for the right moment to come to light. For the first time since that fateful, stormy night, Pepper abandoned his post, flying to Yasmin's outstretched arm. The weight of his trust settled on her shoulder as heavily as the responsibility she now assumed. Whatever came next, the faithful Parrot's years of waiting were about to end, though his journey and the mysteries it would uncover was far from over. The fluorescent lights of Oakridge Memorial Hospital cast a sterile glow across the polished floor as Yasmin walked through the corridors, her heart pounding with each step. She had smuggled Pepper into the building inside her large tote bag, occasionally whispering reassurances when the Parrot shifted or made soft sounds. Hospital regulations strictly prohibited non-service animals, but something deep within her couldn't ignore the connection between this patient bird and the silent man in room 212. "We are almost there," she murmured, pausing outside William's door. The night shift was minimal, and she had timed her visit during the dinner hour when most staff would be occupied helping patients with their meals. "Just stay quiet for a few more minutes." Farsi Pepper's intelligent eyes peered up at her from the bag, somehow conveying understanding beyond what should be possible for a bird. He hadn't made a sound since they entered the building, as if sensing the need for discretion. Yasmin took a deep breath and pushed open the door to room 212. William Harrison sat in a wheelchair by the window, his once robust frame now thin and frail. White hair fell limply over his forehead, and his vacant gaze was fixed on the darkening sky outside. According to his chart, he rarely responded to stimuli and had shown little improvement since his transfer. The staff had come to see him as one of their permanent residents, patients whose conditions would never improve enough for independent living. "Good evening, William," Yasmin said softly, closing the door behind her. "I've brought someone to see you, someone who has been waiting a very long time." William didn't return, giving no indication that he'd heard her. This was typical, according to his chart, periods of complete detachment from his surroundings that could last hours or even days. Carefully, Yasmin set her bag on the bed and opened it. Pepper immediately poked his head out, his eyes finding William's silhouette against the window. For a moment, bird and Parrot remained perfectly still, as if time itself held its breath. Then Pepper spoke, his voice carrying the weight of years of patient waiting. "William home? Pepper found William?" The effect was instantaneous and profound. William's head snapped toward the sound, his eyes widening with a spark of recognition that the hospital staff had never witnessed before. "Pepper?" The name emerged as a hoarse whisper, William's voice, rusty from disuse. "Is that really you?" Yasmin stood frozen, witnessing something medical science would struggle to explain. William, who had been diagnosed with extensive cognitive impairment, whose charts documented minimal verbal communication for years, was speaking with perfect clarity. Pepper launched himself from the bag, wings spreading as he glided across the small room to land on the arm of William's wheelchair. The Parrot's head bobbed with excitement, his entire body quivering with emotion. William home. Pepper waited, kept promise. Tears spilled down William's weathered cheeks as he lifted a trembling hand to stroke the Parrot's feathers. "You waited all this time, all these years?" "Waited on fence, watched road, every day waited." William looked up at Yasmin, his eyes suddenly clear and focused. "He waited on Meadowlark Road, where the accident happened." Yasmin nodded, her own eyes brimming with tears. "Every day through every season, the whole town knows him. They've been leaving food and built him a shelter, but no one knew who he was waiting for, until today." William's attention returned to Pepper, his fingers gently caressing the bird's head. "I told you I'd come back," he whispered. "That last night in the ambulance, I promised." Pepper remembered. William promised. The reunion unfolding before Yasmin was so powerful, so deeply moving, that she almost missed the most extraordinary aspect. William Harrison, who had been deemed permanently impaired, was having a coherent conversation. His eyes were clear, his voice steady despite its initial roughness. The transformation was nothing short of miraculous. "William," she ventured carefully, "do you know where you are?" He looked up, seeming to truly see her for the first time. "Hospital. Been here a long time." His brow furrowed. "But not always this hospital, they moved me." "That is right. You were transferred here last month. Do you remember anything about the accident?" A shadow passed over William's face. "Rain. Dark. The car went off the road." His hand stilled on Pepper's feathers. "I remember climbing out, trying to get back to the road for help, then falling." He paused, his gaze growing distant. "And Pepper was there, calling for help." The parrot bobbed his head in confirmation. "Called help, no one came, dark night, bad rain." William's expression crumpled. "I am so sorry, old friend. I never meant to leave you alone for so long." Yasmin checked her watch, knowing she couldn't risk keeping Pepper in the hospital much longer. Someone was bound to notice eventually, and she had already taken an enormous professional risk. But as she watched the continued interaction between man and bird, she knew she couldn't simply take Pepper away, not after years of separation. "William," she said gently, "I need to take Pepper out of the hospital before someone notices. Animals aren't allowed here and I could lose my job." The panic that flashed across William's face was heartbreaking. "But," he began, his hand tightening protectively around Pepper. "I am not separating you permanently," Yasmin quickly reassured him. "I promise. But we need to do this properly. Tomorrow morning I'll speak with Dr. Morris about Pepper. There are programs for therapy animals, exceptions that can be made, but right now I need to get him out of the building before the night supervisor makes rounds." William looked down at Pepper, who gazed back with equal intensity. After a long moment, he nodded. "You will come back?" he asked, the question directed both to Yasmin and to Pepper. "Tomorrow," Yasmin promised firmly. "Pepper, come back," the parrot echoed, rubbing his head against William's hand in a final gesture of affection before reluctantly allowing Yasmin to return him to her bag. As she prepared to leave, William called her name, his voice stronger than before. "Yasmin, thank you for seeing what others missed, for bringing him to me." She smiled, throat tight with emotion. "Get some rest, William. Things are going to change for you now." She couldn't have known just how prophetic those words would prove to be. The next morning, Yasmin arrived at the hospital early, determined to speak with Dr. Morris before beginning her shift. The hospital's chief physician was known for his rigid adherence to rules, but also for his progressive approach to patient care when presented with compelling evidence. To her surprise, she found Dr. Morris already in William's room, surrounded by several nurses and an aide. The doctor's face bore an expression of disbelief as he reviewed the night nurse's notes. "Nurse Chen," he said when he spotted her in the doorway. "Perhaps you can shed some light on this situation. Mr. Harrison spoke last night, not just a word or two, but complete, coherent sentences. According to these notes, he asked for something called Pepper repeatedly, described details of his accident that are an IT in his records, and requested a pen and paper." Yasmin glanced at William, who sat in his bed looking more alert than any staff member had ever seen him. He gave her a small nod, permission to share what had happened. Taking a deep breath, she told Dr. Morris everything, about Pepper's years of waiting, the reunion she had facilitated, and the remarkable transformation it had triggered in William. Instead of the reprimand she expected, Dr. Morris listened with growing interest. When she finished, he turned to William. "Mr. Harrison, is this accurate? A parrot you owned has been waiting for you all this time." William nodded. "Pepper isn't just a pet. He was my companion, my family. We had a bond that most people wouldn't understand." His voice, though stronger than the previous night, still carried the rasp of long disuse. "Something happened when I saw him again. It was like a key turning in a lock. Suddenly, I could find the words again." Dr. Morris pulled Yasmin aside. "This could be a remarkable case of emotional stimulus triggering neural reconnection," he said quietly. I've read case studies of music or familiar voices occasionally breaking through to patients with brain injuries, but nothing this dramatic. He rubbed his chin thoughtfully. Where is this Parrot now? At my apartment, Yasmin admitted. I couldn't hardly leave him on the roadside knowing what I knew. Instead of anger, Dr. Morris's eyes lit with scientific curiosity. Bring him here, officially, with paperwork. I'll authorize a companion animal exemption. This could be exactly what Mr. Harrison needs for his recovery. The change in William over the following days was nothing short of extraordinary. With Pepper officially installed in his room, after a thorough examination by Gabriel, the veterinarian who had been caring for him during his roadside vigil, William's cognitive functions improved at a rate that baffled the medical staff. Speech that had been nearly absent for years flowed with increasing fluency. Motor skills returned, memories clarified, and personality emerged. A warm, intelligent presence that had been locked inside a non-responsive shell. It is not just the emotional connection, Dr. Morris explained during a case review, though that is certainly significant. I believe there is a neurological component. The specific patterns of speech William shared with the Parrot, the communication pathways they established before his injury, these seem to be providing a template his brain is using to rebuild damaged connections. Pepper became a fixture in the rehabilitation ward, his presence a catalyst not just for William but for other patients who responded to the Parrot's gentle interactions. Staff quickly grew accustomed to the sound of his voice in the corridors, often mimicking their own medical terminology with uncanny accuracy. But it was during a private session with William's newly assigned speech therapist that Pepper revealed something that would change the course of events yet again. The therapist had been working with William on recall exercises using photographs and personal items that Yasmin had retrieved from storage at the long-term care facility. "Can you tell me about this?" she asked, holding up a faded photograph of a younger William standing beside a beautiful woman in front of a small house. William smiled fondly. "That is my cottage on Meadowlark Road, and that's Elizabeth, my wife. She passed away long before my accident." Pepper, who had been quietly observing from his perch by the window, suddenly became agitated. He hopped down to the bed, approaching the photograph with intense focus. "Say not accident," he said clearly, his head bobbing with emphasis. "Bad man pushed, bad man took papers." The room fell silent. William stared at Pepper in confusion. "What do you mean, old friend? What bad man?" But Pepper had retreated into one of his memory loops, repeating, "Night rain, car ditch, help needed," over and over again. The speech therapist exchanged troubled glances with Yasmin, who had been assisting with the session. "William," Yasmin asked carefully, "do you remember everything about your accident?" He frowned, concentrating. "Most of it, I think. The storm, the branch in the road, swerving, ending up in the ditch." He trailed off, his expression uncertain. "But there are gaps. I remember being in the ditch, being cold, Pepper flying for help. But how I got from the car to being injured in the ditch, that part is hazy." Pepper had stopped his repetitive phrase, his intelligent eyes fixed on William. The bird seemed to be waiting, watching for a specific reaction. "Car fine," Pepper said suddenly. "William fine. Then man came, talking about house, about papers, angry talk, then push." William's face paled. "Someone was there that night? Someone pushed me?" Yasmin reached for the call button. This was beyond her expertise, beyond what any of them had expected to uncover. "I think," she said slowly, "we need to call the police." Detective Nathan Blackwood had been with the Oak Ridge Police Department for nearly 2 decades. He had seen his share of unusual cases, but a potential assault investigation based on the testimony of a Parrot was definitely a first. "Let me make sure I understand this," he said, notepad open on his lap as he sat in William's hospital room. "You believe Mr. Harrison's accident may not have been an accident at all, based on statements made by his pet bird?" Yasmin understood the detective's skepticism. "I know how it sounds," she acknowledged, "but African grey parrots have the intelligence of a young child. They don't just mimic, they understand context. And Pepper was there that night." William, sitting up in his bed with Pepper perched beside him, spoke with quiet dignity. "Detective, I know this is unusual, but Pepper has never fabricated events. If he says someone was there, someone was there. And what about these papers the bird mentioned? Do you have any idea what that might refer to? William Hessbrow furrowed in concentration. I owned my property outright. The cottage on Meadowlark Road. It has been in my family for generations, small but situated on several acres of prime land. Understanding dawned in his eyes. There was a development company that kept trying to buy it, even after I repeatedly declined. Parker, the convenience store owner, told me they were trying to acquire all the properties along that stretch for some commercial project. Detective Blackwood E.'s expression shifted from skeptical to interested. Do you remember the name of this company? William shook his head. But the letters would still be at my cottage. If it hasn't been sold or demolished. Blackwood made a note. Actually, your property is still there, Mr. Harrison. After your accident, with no next of kin claiming it, it went into a sort of legal limbo. The courts appointed a conservator for your estate when it became clear your condition was long-term. As far as I know, nothing has been done with the property except basic maintenance to prevent deterioration. Pepper, who had been quietly observing the conversation, suddenly became animated. Gold man, gold watch, paper man. William looked at the parrot with renewed attention. A man with a gold watch? Is that who was there that night, Pepper? Gold man angry. Want papers. William say no, then push. Detective Blackwood had stopped writing, watching the interaction between man and bird with increasing interest. Despite his initial skepticism, he couldn't deny the specificity of the parrot OS recollections or the obvious intelligence behind those bright eyes. Mr. Harrison, could the development company have been Goldcrest Enterprises? They were quite active in acquiring properties around here a few years back. The CEO, Victor Reynolds, is known for his flashy style, including, if I recall correctly, a rather ostentatious gold watch. William Rees' eyes widened. Yes, that sounds right. Goldcrest. They were particularly persistent. Blackwood stood, tucking his notebook into his pocket. I think I need to look into some property records and maybe have a conversation with Mr. Reynolds. He hesitated, then added, I can promise anything. After all this time, evidence will be hard to come by. But if what your parrot suggests is true, if someone deliberately caused your injuries and left you to die, then this isn't just assault. It is attempted murder. As the detective left, William reached out to stroke Pepper's feathers, his expression troubled. All these years, he murmured. I never questioned that it was just an accident. Why didn't you tell someone sooner, old friend? Pepper tilted his head, eyes sad. Tried. Said, bad man, many times. No one understood. No one listened, like William listens. Yasmin, who had remained silent during the detective's questioning, felt a chill run through her. He probably did try to tell people, but without context, without someone who knew to ask the right questions, his words would have seemed like random mimicry. William nodded slowly. The perfect witness to a crime. He saw everything, could repeat exactly what happened, but no one would understand what they were hearing. He looked at Pepper with profound respect. And still, you waited all those years, not just for me, but for justice. Pepper bobbed his head as if confirming William E.'s interpretation. Then he added something that made both humans freeze. Goldman came back, many times, looking for papers, watching Pepper wait. The implications were staggering. If Victor Reynolds had returned to the scene repeatedly over the years, it suggested not only guilt but an ongoing concern about evidence or witnesses. And all that time he would have seen a grey parrot maintaining its vigil by the roadside, a constant, silent reminder of the crime he believed he had gotten away with. What none of them realized was that Detective Blackwood's investigation was about to uncover a web of deception far more complex than a single act of violence on a stormy night. The truth that had waited patiently alongside Pepper on Meadowlark Road was finally ready to emerge, a truth that would shake the foundations of Oakridge and bring both justice and danger to those who sought to reveal it. As William drifted off to sleep that night, Pepper keeping watch from his perch near the window, neither man nor bird could have anticipated how their reunion would ripple outward, touching lives throughout the community and setting in motion events that would test the limits of loyalty, courage, and the extraordinary bond between a man and the faithful friend who had never given up on him. The morning sun filtered through the blinds of William S. hospital room, casting golden stripes across the floor. Pepper preened his feathers on his special perch, installed by hospital maintenance at Dr. Morris A.S. request. 3 weeks had passed since Detective Blackwood began his investigation, weeks that had seen William S.'s recovery accelerate beyond anyone S. expectations. "Ready for the big day?" Yasmin asked as she entered, carrying a small bag of William S. belongings. William nodded, his eyes bright with anticipation. Today was the day he would return to his cottage on Meadowlark Road for the first time since the accident. Detective Blackwood had arranged for a police escort, partly as a courtesy, partly as protection. The investigation into Victor Reynolds and Goldcrest Enterprises had uncovered troubling evidence. "Pepper ready," the Parrot announced, bobbing his head excitedly. "Home today. William and Pepper home." The cottage appeared smaller than William remembered, its white paint faded and garden overgrown, but it was still his home, preserved in a strange time capsule. Inside, everything remained exactly as he had left it that stormy night. Books on the side table, reading glasses on the desk, tea mug in the sink. "It's like stepping back in time," William murmured, running his fingers along the dusty bookshelf. Detective Blackwood followed them in, his expression serious. "Mr. Harrison, I need to show you something." He led them to the study where a small writing desk stood near the window. "This desk, is this where you kept important documents?" William nodded. "Yes, in the lower right drawer. It had a small lock, though not very secure." Blackwood knelt down, pointing to scratch marks around the drawer S lock. "Someone tried to force this open, but apparently gave up. The drawer ES still locked." He looked up at William. "Do you still have the key?" William crossed to a watercolor painting of a lighthouse, carefully removing it from the wall to reveal a small wall safe. His fingers moved automatically, spinning the dial with practiced ease. The safe door swung open, revealing a collection of jewelry, documents, and a small brass key. "Some things you never forget," he said with a small smile, retrieving the key and returning to the desk. The drawer opened smoothly, revealing folders of documents, but William S. brow furrowed in confusion. "Something's not right. There should be a red folder with my property deeds." "Goldman took red paper," Pepper interjected from his perch on a nearby chair. "Night of rain, took after push." Blackwood nodded grimly. "That matches what we found in Goldcrest S records. A deed to your property appeared in their files dated the day after your accident. The signature is a crude forgery. They clearly didn't know you were left-handed. I've already filed the paperwork to invalidate it." William sank into his desk chair, the full weight of the revelation settling on him. "So it is true. He tried to kill me for my land." "Not just your land," Blackwood said, placing a large map on the desk. "Your property was the final piece in a complex assembly. Reynolds needed every parcel along this stretch to secure a major development deal with a national retail chain. Without your land, the project couldn't proceed." He pointed to red circles on the map. "These are all properties Goldcrest acquired in the months before your accident. Yours was the only holdout." "But why not just offer more money?" Yasmin asked, standing protectively near William. "Because the land wasn't actually worth what Reynolds was paying," Blackwood explained. "Not for ordinary development. But what no one knew at the time was that geological surveys had discovered significant natural gas deposits in this region. The retail development was just a cover. Reynolds stood to make millions in mineral rights alone." Pepper suddenly flew to the window, feathers ruffled in agitation. "Goldman car! Goldman coming!" Blackwood moved quickly to the window. Sure enough, a sleek black luxury car was pulling up outside the cottage. Victor Reynolds himself stepped out, his gold watch glinting in the sunlight. "Stay here," the detective ordered, hand moving to his service weapon as he headed for the door. Through the window they watched the confrontation unfold. Reynolds, a tall man with silver-streaked hair and an expensive suit, froze at the sight of Blackwood. Words were exchanged, Reynolds' expression shifting from confidence to alarm. When Blackwood produced handcuffs, Reynolds backed away, reaching into his jacket. "He is got a gun!" William exclaimed. Before anyone could react, Pepper launched himself through the partially open window. Wings spread wide as he flew directly at Reynolds' face, screeching at full volume. The distraction gave Blackwood the crucial seconds he needed to draw his weapon and order Reynolds to the ground. By the time backup arrived, Reynolds was in custody, his brief attempt at resistance thoroughly defeated by the unexpected aerial assault from a determined African grey parrot. Inside the cottage, Yasmin carefully examined Pepper for injuries, while William watched anxiously. "Is he all right?" "He is fine," she assured him with a smile. "Not a feather out of place. Our hero was too quick for Reynolds to harm him." "Pepper, protect William," the parrot stated matter-of-factly, as if diving at an armed criminal was simply part of his duties. When Blackwood returned, his expression was one of satisfaction. "Reynolds is on his way to the station, and you'll be interested to know what we found in his car, the original deed to your property, along with other documents he apparently kept as insurance against any investigation." He smiled grimly. The man's arrogance may have been his undoing. He couldn't bear to destroy the evidence of his victory over you. In the days that followed, the full story emerged. Reynolds confessed to attacking William that night, seeing an opportunity in the storm and the isolated location. He had followed William's car, waiting for the right moment. When William swerved to avoid the fallen branch, Reynolds had approached offering help, then attacked when William refused to sign over his property. After pushing William into the ditch, he had returned to the car to search for the property documents, finding only a copy which he later forged. The original remained safely locked in the desk drawer. What Reynolds hadn't counted on was Pepper, a witness he couldn't intimidate or silence. Though he had returned many times over the years, watching the parrot maintaining its vigil, it never occurred to him that the bird could eventually communicate what it had witnessed. The case against Reynolds was airtight. Between Pepper's testimony, admitted as circumstantial evidence but compelling in context, the forged deed, and Reynolds' own confession, the prosecutor assured William that justice would be served. More immediately meaningful to William was the return to his cottage. With Yasmin's help coordinating his ongoing rehabilitation and Gabriel the veterinarian making regular house calls to check on Pepper, William settled back into the rhythm of home life. The cottage underwent some necessary renovations to accommodate William's needs during his continued recovery. The Oak Ridge community, upon learning the full story of William's ordeal and Pepper's faithful vigil, rallied around them. Parker from the convenience store organized volunteers to restore the garden. Ruth and Thomas Calloway, who had driven past Pepper's post for years, brought home-cooked meals several times a week. William's recovery continued to astound his medical team. Dr. Morris documented the case for medical journals, noting the extraordinary neurological improvements triggered by emotional connection and familiar communication patterns. Pepper became something of a celebrity in medical circles, with researchers visiting from around the country to observe the remarkable bond between man and bird. One evening, as autumn painted the trees in fiery hues, William sat on his porch with Yasmin, watching Pepper explore the garden. "He doesn't need to wait by the road anymore," William observed, "yet sometimes I still find him perched on that fence post, looking down Meadowlark Road." Yasmin smiled. "Old habits die hard, but I think it is more than that. For Pepper, that post became a symbol of loyalty, of promises kept against all odds. It is part of who he is. It is part of who we both are now," William agreed softly. "The man who came back, and the parrot who never left." He turned to Yasmin, taking her hand in his. "I can never thank you enough for seeing what others missed." She squeezed his hand gently. "Some connections are too powerful to ignore. I am just glad I could help bring you both home." Their quiet moment was interrupted by Pepper, who flew up to join them on the porch railing. "Family home," he announced with satisfaction. "All home now." William smiled at his faithful friend. "Yes, Pepper, we're all home now." In the years that followed, the story of Pepper's vigil became legend in Oak Ridge. Visitors would come just to see the famous parrot and the man he had waited for so faithfully. William, once a solitary professor, found himself at the center of a caring community. His cottage, once coveted for the land beneath it, became a place of gathering and healing. Victor Reynolds was convicted of attempted murder and numerous fraud charges. The revelation of his crimes led to the discovery of similar schemes across multiple counties, resulting in additional charges and the eventual dissolution of Goldcrest Enterprises. The natural gas deposits that had motivated his ruthless pursuit of land were eventually developed through legitimate means with fair compensation to all property owners. Yasmin E.'s career flourished as her role in William E.'s recovery earned her recognition in medical circles. She was promoted to head of rehabilitation services at Oak Ridge Memorial, where she implemented innovative programs incorporating animal therapy. Though she maintained her own apartment in town, she spent more and more time at the cottage, her friendship with William deepening into something more meaningful with each passing season. Gabriel, the veterinarian who had looked after Pepper during his roadside vigil, documented the Parrot's remarkable story in a book that brought attention to the intelligence and emotional capacity of these extraordinary birds. Sales of the book funded a sanctuary for abandoned and neglected parrots, built on a corner of William's property, a place of second chances for birds who, like Pepper, had shown remarkable resilience. And Pepper himself continued to thrive, his vocabulary expanding once again as he absorbed the conversations and connections of their new extended family. Though he no longer needed to maintain his lonely watch on Meadowlark Road, he had earned his place in the heart of Oak Ridge, not just as the parrot who waited, but as the witness whose unwavering loyalty had ultimately brought truth to light and justice to those who deserved it. On quiet evenings, William would sometimes sit with Pepper on the porch watching the sun set over Meadowlark Road. In those peaceful moments, both man and bird seemed to share a profound understanding that some bonds transcend language, that loyalty can outlast even the darkest nights, and that patience, no matter how long the wait, carries its own rewards. "We kept our promises, old friend," William would say, gently stroking Pepper's feathers, and Pepper, wise eyes reflecting the golden light of sunset, would simply bob his head and reply, "Family forever, worth waiting for." In that simple truth, spoken by a bird who had maintained his faithful vigil through changing seasons and passing years, lay the essence of their extraordinary journey, a testament to the power of connection, the triumph of truth, and the unbreakable bond between a man and the devoted friend who never lost faith that one day he would come home. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the world of captivating stories. I trust you found today's narrative as engaging as I did. If you enjoyed this exploration into fascinating and compelling narratives, kindly indicate your appreciation by liking this video. Are you watching on mobile? Show your appreciation with a double tap for hype. For more captivating stories and journeys into the heart of compelling storytelling, please subscribe to the channel and activate notifications so you don't miss a single upload. Your thoughts and interpretations are most welcome. Please share your perspectives on today's story in the comments below. And if you believe others would find this content engaging, please consider sharing the video with your network. Until our next journey into the world of captivating tales, I bid you farewell.